Your EGR clogs, your truck loses response. You think, simple solution, delete it. Problem solved, right? Not so fast. A delete changes more than just airflow. It touches emissions, reliability, even how shops look at your warranty. Not illegal everywhere and not always covered by your warranty either. We'll sort out the details. What matters for you is cost versus benefit. Stick with me. I'll give you a 3-step checklist you can use in your garage to decide if deleting makes sense. Before we get to that checklist, let's look at why the EGR feels like the enemy in the first place. Why EGR feels like the enemy? You keep cleaning the intake, swapping filters, spraying sensors, and yet the carbon still comes back. The reason is simple. The EGR system is always in play. Over time, the recirculated exhaust carrying soot builds up in the intake and around the valve. That soot mixes with oil vapors and hardens into a crust you can only scrape or soak off. Now, understand what the system is supposed to do. EGR recirculates a portion of exhaust gas into the intake to reduce peak combustion temperatures, which in turn reduces NOx formation. On paper, that's a win for emissions compliance. Less nitrogen oxide leaves the tailpipe, and regulators are happy. But it also means your motor isn't just breathing filtered fresh air, it's rebreathing dirty, used gas. That's where the trade-off begins. Here's the kicker. What protects the air outside clogs the flow inside. Those deposits layer up in the runners, cooler, and valve passages, and they don't just vanish. Think cholesterol building inside arteries. Each gram sneaks up until the passage shrinks. The engine feels that same squeeze. Airflow drops, throttle feels lazy, boost lags, and fuel mileage slides. A clear shop example, I've seen trucks that couldn't spool the turbo until they crossed 2,000 RPM because the intake was narrowed with carbon. Below that, the turbo just couldn't breathe enough to spin. Clean the intake and suddenly the response comes back. No new tune, no extra parts, just restored breathing space. Now, before you jump to delete, try this first. A thorough intake and EGR cleaning or replacing a clogged valve often restores most of the throttle response you think you lost for good. Yes, it costs you labor and some solvent, but it's usually cheaper than a delete kit and it keeps the emissions equipment working. Many owners stop there. One detail you should know, the EGR isn't wide open all the time. It mostly operates at light throttle and cruise. Once you're at wide open throttle, it's usually closed. That's why some drivers feel day-to-day sluggishness more than top-end loss, and why deleting it changes the normal driving feel more than the full throttle power. So you can see why owners get tired of scraping soot and paying for repeat cleanings. For them, an EGR delete signals fresh oxygen in, sharper throttle, quicker turbo spin, and no more weekend teardown just to clear muck. The price math even makes sense. Cleanings and valve swaps stack up every few years. A basic delete kit and software flash may only cost a few hundred once, and the soot problem looks solved. But talk in the shop is often the same. Stop the soot, gain back the response, call it done. That's only half the picture, because once you bolt on plates or swap out parts, the question shifts inside the ECU, the brain that runs fueling, timing, and emissions cycles. That's where the real test begins, and where this so-called fix can spark a whole new set of problems. The hidden trade-offs after a delete. Once the plates go in or the software gets flipped, the real question is, what happens next? This is where the hidden trade-offs after a delete start to show up. There are 3 main ways people actually do it. First, block off plates. You sandwich a metal plate between the valve and manifold to stop flow. The upside is, it looks stock. The downside is, it's still illegal in many places. And yes, it still requires a proper tune. Second, full hardware removal. You pull the valve, pipes, and cooler out and cap the ports. This clears out potential failure points, but is harder to reverse and very obvious at inspection. Third, software only. You leave all the hardware installed, but tell the ECU never to open the valve again. That one is clean, simple to undo, but it still defeats emissions and demands a real map to run right. Here's the part too many skip. If you don't retune the ECU, you risk check engine lights, limp mode, or incorrect fueling. Professional retuning is normally required after any delete. The factory computer expects those exhaust cycles. If it doesn't see them, it throws codes, trims fuel wrong, and can trigger knock or timing errors. This isn't optional. Done without proper software, you'll chase idle surges, dash lights, or a motor that drops to limp every time you load it. I've seen this play out in the shop. Trucks come in with plates installed and hardware missing, but no ECU work. The owner thinks it's cheap and simple. What they get instead is endless codes, failed readiness monitors, and performance capped to bare minimum until the ECU is properly set up. Now, retuning done professionally can look attractive. Shops report power gains in the 5 to 15% range and fuel economy sometimes up to 20% better. But keep in mind, those numbers are reported ranges, not guarantees. They vary with engine, tune, and how you actually drive. In real-world testing, even just cleaning and correctly tuning a stock truck often recovers lost spool without swapping parts. Heat is the other side of the coin. Deleting the EGR can lower intake temps, but often raises exhaust gas temperatures under load. That's why shops recommend an EGT gauge and conservative tuning when towing or pushing the truck. Exhaust gas temperature, or EGT, is the heat leaving your cylinders through the turbo. Run it too hot and you stress turbine housings, valves, and pistons. That extra load shortens life on expensive parts, and you won't see it coming unless you monitor temps. Warranty is just as critical. Manufacturers and dealers can deny warranty claims related to engine and powertrain issues when they find emission controls removed or defeated. Expect higher risk to engine-related warranty coverage. And beyond warranty, resale drops. Buyers hesitate on a deleted truck because of inspection trouble, fines, and the chance of major repairs sitting squarely on them. And don't think delete clears the intake forever. Delete cuts soot, but crankcase oil still bakes on the intake, so expect some cleaning later. You slow the buildup, but you don't stop it. Here's the kicker. Done right, with a steady ECU map, you get faster throttle, cleaner spool, and less weekend scraping of carbon. Done wrong, you cook parts, fight codes, and lose warranty and value. What follows is where you decide if that's a trade you're willing to accept. Straight up, it's a trade gains now, consequences later. That's why the smart move is treating it like any other job in the shop. Follow a clear checklist before you touch a wrench. What you need to do: 1, check local emissions laws and your registration or test rules. 2, if it's legal, budget for a professional ECU tune and an EGT gauge if you haul heavy. 3, weigh long-term costs by comparing repeat cleaning bills against the resale and warranty risks of a delete. What truck do you have, and how many miles before you'd even consider a delete? Drop it below. Subscribe for practical how-tos and tool-first tutorials you can use this weekend.